Hey chums, welcome back to Again with Chums Podcast. I'm joined once again by the ever glamorous Frankie. How you doing, Frankie?
Thank you. Good. Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, well, there was no one else, so you're like a good backup.
I'm the
I,
only
I've
choice.
I asked everyone else, and everyone else just either ignored me or said they're busy. So yeah, you're the pretty much like the unofficial co-host now. So how you been? You good?
Yeah, good. Just been busy. Went to Scotland, so that was
Yeah,
nice.
good. Yeah, very remote up the part you went to, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was um it was actually the west of Scotland, southwest in Ayrshire. It's a very I haven't been there before. It's not typically touristy around there, so it was nice. Yeah,
Okay,
bit
cool.
different.
Nice. I've never been to the west of Scotland either. Normally, when you were children, we used to go either through the middle or
Yeah.
on the eastern part. So you would
Yeah.
go straight up, like bypass the Lake District and all that, like sort of like right through the middle of the Pennines, straight into Scotland, and go sort of like in between Edinburgh and Glasgow, and then go
Yeah.
straight into the Highlands. But yeah,
Yeah.
okay, cool. All right, nice. Speaking of like the Highlands and medieval and isolation, let's talk about today's subject, which we're gonna which we hit we spoke briefly on the last podcast,
Mm.
RPGs, because I think I'm gonna say RPGs is your favorite um genre in video games, and I would say it's probably mine as well.
Mm.
So yeah, look, we're going to talk about what we would like or what we think should be in the key ingredients for to make a good RPG in our opinion. I mean,
Yeah.
like we were raised on BioWare games and lesser degree like Square Enix like RPGs, more specifically like the Final Fantasy series. So ours is kind of varies, but there's been other RPGs that from other developers that we've played, but I would say like those two are our main sort of RPGs that developers that we play, the games
I,
that
I
they
would
produce.
I would agree. I think to a lesser extent, probably like not Australian, a kind of Skyrim and that kind of game as well.
What
Know,
Bethesda?
Bethesda, yeah, Morrowind and that kind of.
Jesus, you just peaked there. Like you went really close to your mic, and you just the audio peaked in my headset.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
I'd never really played Morrowind. I think I own it, but I never played it on the Xbox or PC.
Mm,
Obviously everyone played Skyrim. I
yeah,
played a bit of Oblivion, that game, that Elder Scrolls game, and I played Fallout and Fallout 3 specifically, and
yeah,
on the 360 and Fallout 4 on the Xbox One, but I didn't
yeah.
really like Fallout 4 that much, to be honest with you. But like I always play
Mm,
a BioWare game, like before they started going a bit shitty. But
mm,
in the peak sort of BioWare era, I thought was from Knights of the Old Republic all the way to the Dragon like Mass Effect Dragon Age series. So played all of them up to that point. I didn't play Anthem because that's not an RPG. So and that was like derailed because it wasn't very good, and it's sort of going like I think like EA wanted BioWare to make a live service game, and so that's what they did. Something like that can rival like Destiny or something like that. But
yeah. I
I
didn't
think
play it, so I have.
uh,
It's. I think I started to become very picky with Bioware games that I was buying.
mm,
Since I played Andromeda. So yeah, since Andromeda, I haven't really like before. I think you and I would always just buy anything that Bioware would produce. We just like, be like, yep, Bioware in the basket, in the cart, or whatever. But I don't think well, to a lesser extent, you yourself, but I I haven't bought anything
Mm,
really
yeah.
Bioware since.
Mm. I mean,
I
you
didn't
played
even buy.
you played Inquisition. You
Yeah,
completed
I
that.
mean, probably from 24. I think the last Bioware product I bought was Inquisition, and I didn't buy Andromeda, and I didn't buy the Mass Effect trilogy, remastered trilogy. I just played your one.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, I've been a bit more picky with Bioware recently because I just don't think, I think the last couple of games were pretty shocking. So yeah, I haven't really. I think since Mass Effect 3, I liked part of that game, and the lesser half, I guess, the the bit near the end wasn't to my liking, and I haven't really got over that to an
Yeah.
extent. Yeah,
Hmm.
so yeah, I would
Sorry.
definitely say peak Bioware for me um, was probably Dragon Age Origins. So you had Mass Effect 1 come out, and then you had Dragon Age Origins. And then after that, as much as I think Mass Effect 2 is probably my favorite Mass Effect, it wasn't. It became started to become less of an RPG, and I could see why there were criticisms towards that game. Um, but I think peak Bioware, where it
Mm.
was just perfect, was
Yeah.
Dragon Age Origins. Like it was
Yeah.
like going, and then it
Yeah.
kind of.
Yeah. Okay. So, we obviously, you played Final Fantasy, like all the big hitters, like from 7 to 12. I don't think
I
you played.
played.
You didn't play. You played a bit of 13.
I played a bit of 13. I hated 13. I couldn't get into
Yeah.
13. And that's when I stopped playing Final Fantasy. Was after 13. I didn't. I just stopped buying their games, even ones that were related to Final Fantasy 7. I stopped like after Crisis Core. I completed Crisis Core, and then after anything after the kind of Crisis Core, I wasn't interested in. Um, but I played 6. I played 3 on my mobile phone, and I played 7, 8, 9, 10. I didn't play the online game, and then I played 12, and then I played a
Yeah,
bit of 13.
not many people played the online game in that game. I mean, I played the remake,
Mm-hmm.
7 remake. You watched me play that.
Yeah, I watched you.
Um, yeah, yeah. I think it looked great. It played well. But it was very what's the word I'm looking for? Not RPG-ish. It was more like your handheld, very, very linear. And of course, they've split it into 3 parts. So it was you just stuck in Midgar, and they changed some of it, the story, but we won't really go into that. But anyway, like let's talk about like if you what if you were to like take some ingredients,
Yeah.
put it in a pot, stir it around, and come out with an RPG. What will the ingredients be? What, in your opinion, will make like let's just start with like the base ingredients, like
Yeah.
what the setting, like what world would you like it? Do you prefer sci-fi, cyberpunk? Do you prefer fantasy or sci-fi
It's
fantasy?
I mean, I really, really like I think because my favorite game of all time is probably Final Fantasy VII. I would say Cyberpunk is pretty up there, but um it's it's only kind of like I played Cyberpunk 77. I wasn't really that invested to say the least. But I would probably say medieval, like not medieval, but medieval fantasy is always like you can't really mess that up. That's
So
as an RPG.
swords and shields and dragons and stuff.
Yeah, yeah, and
Mm.
swords and shields, dragons, trolls,
Yeah, I get it. We get it. Like so that's
yeah,
you just want that. You want the fantasy medieval sort of Tolkien sort of thing, like sort of like Dragon Age. Then, right? You would like that as your base sort of
yeah. I
layer.
think
That
that
and
would be
then
like the best. Yeah.
yeah. Now, what interests you in like? Do you prefer a silent protagonist? Do you prefer a voice protagonist, or do you prefer a preset protagonist, a la like, hold up, like The Witcher, or do you like to customize your characters, like say, like in, like Dragon Age or Fallout, or
I
what's
would say
your?
custom. definitely customized, not silent protagonists, because
I can't stand silent protagonists.
I can't stand silent, because
Mm.
you play like I played Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic again because it was such a like great game, and your character just looks stoned half the time. Like when they're silent, it's just kind of like, because it focuses on the character, it looks really um weird. And I like Dragon Age Origins did it okay, but there were some really funny one-liners in Dragon Age Origins, which I wish I could hear. Like, do you know what I mean? Um, but I would definitely say a voiced protagonist who's customizable. So not, I don't want to play. I do like playing. I shouldn't say that, but like ideally, I wouldn't play like a Geralt um
Or
or a
Cloud.
Cloud. Yeah, I would play. I
Um,
would like my own character.
Jesus, your audio, man. It came through and it peaked again. I
I
don't
don't know.
know,
It's laptop. So.
yeah, your mic's quite sensitive. Yeah, I agree. I prefer voiced 100%, and I like. I mean, I'm not too bothered about the customization, like to have the character look like me or anything like that. I'm not really bothered. If that's an option, I'll do it. Like in Bioware games, that's always an option. But with
Yeah,
if it's a preset, it's like Commander Shepard. I never alter the male face of Commander Shepard because I think it
yeah,
just looks great. So that's
yeah,
just because it's modeled on it's modeled on an actual person. So I think it
yeah.
looks great. So I just leave it like that. But yeah, if it's like with Dragon Age or the Dragon Age series, I always customize the face because the presets look shit. So I just
Mhm.
customize the face and make it look a bit cooler, give it funky eyes and shit. But they're voiced as well. So yeah, I mean like presets like Gal or Cloud or any other a lot of JRPGs have preset characters that you can't customize. So yeah, I know there's some that allow you to, but yeah. Anyway, like, but another thing, some RPGs they have no party members, or they have party members, but they don't appear with you when you're traversing the world. Like I'm playing Tales of Arise at the moment. You have party
Yeah,
members, but when you travel, they sort of disappear and they only appear when you're in combat, um, or there's a cutscene or dialogue. They sort of just appear. What do you prefer? Do you prefer a lone character or do you prefer a party or parties that just that disappear? What's yours?
definitely parties. And
Mm.
I'm not gonna try. I don't want to just say Dragon Age Origins is like the perfect ideal RPG, but like I was
Uh,
playing Creed 4 and they have a party system because they Spider, I think this is called Spiders, kind of wanted to replicate Dragon Age or Bioware type games, but they also have like really good party banter when they're talking amongst each other when you're traversing the landscape. And to me, like when you're playing Skyrim, it can be really boring just traveling on your own. And what I love about Creed 4 and to a certain extent even games like Fable where you do sometimes have
mm,
a little party. Fable 3 is the one, and Fable 2 and 3 are the ones that come to the top of my head. Apart from Dragon Age, is that there's some great banter between the party members, and that just makes the kind of story or world become more real. And that's fun because otherwise you're just running around randomly killing things. And I used to play World of Warcraft, and I'd always get a party. I'd always, go on adventures with a group of us, as opposed to just like alone playing and leveling up that way. I'd go and do a dungeon with somebody or something like that because that's
mm.
fun. That's fun to
What?
me.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I
How
think
about you?
yeah, I agree. I've always preferred having party members with you. Final Fantasy. No, does Final Fantasy? No, they disappeared, didn't they? They disappeared. Fighting Final Fantasy
No,
games. They
no,
did.
they
They weren't. They
no.
weren't walking with you. They
Yeah, they
weren't.
were. Final Fantasy 8.
I swear. I swear. In 10. when you were walking the world, it was just Titus running around on his own, and then the party would appear when you're in combat. Maybe I'm thinking it because I remember
Yeah,
playing it. Some parts, like when you're doing the world
there's some that do
traversing,
that.
when you're traversing, like when you're in a
Yeah,
dungeon, I
there's
think
some.
they appear. But
Yeah, number 8, you definitely have the party members because I remember they would always form a perfect line when you're running, and then they would run after you. And I think it was the first one to do that. Final Fantasy 9, you have the party with you as well. Number 7, you do have them with you, but not when you're traversing the big world, but when you're in
mm,
little levels, they're with you.
mm,
Um, but yeah, yeah, I prefer
yeah,
8 wasn't my favorite to be fair, but I did like the fact that you didn't feel
yeah.
like you're
I mean,
alone.
like like you say in Fable, there's not a party, but you would have people follow you for certain quests,
Yeah,
like one off and stuff. And The Witcher, that would be the same. He's normally Geralt on his own, but sometimes he would have someone else come with him for that particular quest line.
yeah,
But yeah, I always preferred the party system. I've always preferred that, having them around
yeah.
you. Yeah, like you say, the banter, and it makes combat fun, and it's just nice to have them with you instead of just
Mm.
appearing out of thin air. But yeah, I agree with you there. This podcast is probably just like what makes the perfect Bioware game, because I think they've perfected the genre. But yeah, yeah, I agree with that. But another aspect, this became a popular thing, particularly after Skyrim. Do you
Mm.
prefer open world, or do you prefer big zones,
I don't prefer
or
either.
do you prefer linear sort of storytelling?
I don't like linear. That's like when I was playing Final Fantasy 13, that was too linear.
Yeah,
That was
I
just
think that
like a corridor
was
after corridor. Um,
yeah.
I don't like that kind of linear. I don't like massive open worlds. I don't like games like Fallout 4, where I just feel like I'm a bit too I think it's a bit overwhelming to have a world that big. And sometimes I really like to feel like I'm cheap and progressing through the storyline. And so with Fallout 4 and Skyrim, you can be doing hundreds of hours of meaningless, I guess I
Mm,
would say, because I'm not really into like loads of side quests unless they're a lot of fun. Like I thought Oblivion had better side quests than Skyrim, but you know, it just feels a bit overwhelming to me. But I don't also like Dragon Age Inquisition, where you had it wasn't open world, but you had zones of just massive like maps where you just were just running through the landscape and just killing things to level up or picking things up. I don't like meaningless tasks within a massive open world. Dragon Age 2, sorry, had a it wasn't linear. It was kind of sort of like you could explore wherever you want, but the world was too small. And Dragon Age 1, I found some of the this is what annoys me about Dragon Age 1 once I've replayed it again. There's no differentiation, like there's no it's very like homogenous. Some of the worlds I found that I mean you're mostly in Thedas, sorry, not you're mostly in Ferelden, and so things just kind of end up looking the same over and over. And I found it quite tedious sometimes because it was just there's no variation. Um, and, actually, I think Mass Effect did it pretty well out of all. Not that I know it's not a medieval fantasy, but Dragon Age 1 and Dragon Age Mass Effect 1, sorry, and Mass Effect 2 did it pretty well. I found Mass
mm,
Effect very linear, very like shooter
mm.
galleries. So but yeah, kind of like a nice midpoint. But I feel like every map or every zone you come in, you have to make it meaningful. For me personally, this is not some people love
Mm.
Skyrim and love doing
I mean, I agree. I like
meaningless
Sky.
rubbish.
I like Skyrim, but it works for Skyrim. That's what it's built
Mm,
for. Like
yeah.
Oblivion and Morrowind, they're all built like that similar way. But I prefer a little mix of the two. I mean, I'm currently playing through Inquisition on my on the Twitch channel, and oh god, there's just some parts I'm just like, oh god, can we just get to the story? Why do I
Yeah.
have to like gain certain amount of power to unlock story content? I'm just like,
Yeah.
oh, it's such a drag, and I'm just like, man, how did I get through this? Like when I've completed it, but yeah, like I think not Dragon Age. I think The Witcher 3 is very, I mean, that's pretty much like a near perfect RPG game, RPG, because all the story content seems really thought out. There's nothing like very similar, like fetch quests or get me a 10 pelts, something like that. You know what I mean? It just felt
Mm.
there was like a story. Everything was very well structured, lots of dialogue, lots of cutscenes, lots of unique stories. I thought that did it pretty well. Uh, but
I think,
again,
yeah.
yeah. So, but yeah, like something in between. Maybe that's what they're going to concentrate on. Dragon Age 4, Dread
Yeah, I
Wolf.
just,
That's been set in Tevinter, so probably that'll be like you go to Tevinter, then you probably obviously you're going to fight the Canary, so you're going to go over to I can't remember the name of the island that they occupy, but yeah, maybe it'll
to
be.
be honest, I'm I don't really like the Canary. I find them pretty boring. But
Yeah.
I just don't want, yeah, like filler. I felt like Dragon Age Inquisition was a lot of filler, and like if you actually played the storyline, it was like 10 hours.
Mm. But then you could have like games like Final Fantasy 7 remake, where that was fucking linear as hell, man. That just
Yeah,
held your hand and just guided you through the story. There's no variation in the story or anything. It just said, no, this is how it's gonna go. And this leads me on to another point. Do you like one ending, a set ending, or would you like multiple endings? Or would you just like or would you just like a slight change in ending? Because I think nearly every RPG has a different ending. I know there's a few which has like one singular ending. Obviously,
yeah,
with JRPGs, they have multiple endings, but with Final Fantasy Remake, that was just one ending. There's no other ending. That was just it. You just railroaded into that. But as you know, like Western RPGs have multiple endings or slightly varied
yeah.
endings. What do you prefer? Like, what would you put in your pot?
I think like because when you play, I like an to be honest with you, I like multiple endings, but I know that's
Mm,
very hard to do because now if you do multiple endings, you kind of shoot yourself in the foot now because especially if it becomes popular, and I think that's what's happened with Mass Effect 3 is like they were like,
if
okay,
it's
spoiler, we're gonna kill Commander Shepard,
yeah,
but
yeah.
and they're like,
They
oh shit.
they
um,
Dragon Age definitely did that as well because they had to
yeah,
retcon a lot of stuff.
yeah, so that I although I like if they're gonna make one standalone game, then I like multiple endings, and that's kind of why, to a lesser extent, Knights of the Republic minus Knights of the Republic 2, which doesn't really continue Revan's story, but Dragon Age, sorry, Knights of the Republic was great in that respect, but
Yeah.
also
To
I
be to
kind
be
of
fair, sorry to cut you off there. That only had two endings. It was
yeah,
really the light side and the dark side.
which was perfect for Star Wars because
Yeah,
it is
that's
light
yeah,
and dark. It's very like dichotomous.
that's true
And it's very
actually.
duality, it's like bad and good.
Mm,
So that
mm,
worked. But in terms of what I was going to say, it was that like with Dragon Age Inquisition, it was like it doesn't matter what you do in the whole
mm,
game. Like, okay, your love interest might change, but I'm talking about the main storyline. Um, it doesn't really matter what you
mm-hmm.
do because it always ends the same. And it always ends the same because you always have to end up killing Corypheus. So it's kind of, I felt like a lot of the decisions I
Yeah,
was making throughout the game
yeah.
really any
Yeah,
point to it. It was
yeah. Inquisition didn't have any variation in ending, I don't
to the
think.
ending, but you make
No.
but the issue is it was like a kind of force. like there was like a lot of decisions in the game and they're like, oh, are you going to choose the mages or are you going to choose, the
Mm.
Templars? But actually none of that. I feel like it should have made a difference to how the game ended. And even if it meant some people dying, like in Mass
Mm.
Effect 2, because you were doing all these things to fight Corinthians,
Yeah,
but it didn't really matter.
yeah.
And
It's
yeah,
like that in Dragon Age 2. It's no matter who you choose, if you chose the Templars or the Mages, you still had to end up fighting them in the end anyway. So it
yeah,
didn't matter. It really didn't.
yeah.
That didn't matter. That was one like negative I have on that game. I quite like the game. I think it's better than Inquisition, but that's a massive negative that's on there. But like with JRPGs, excluding Final Fantasy, where it's all seems to have one end, like one set ending. Um, Maybe the earlier ones had multiple endings, but a lot of like JRPGs have multiple endings. But normally, like you said, they're like one-off stories. Like Chrono Trigger had multiple endings, but that was like more of a just a self-contained story.
Yeah.
But when you want to start a franchise, I get like Final Fantasy has one ending because it's all self-contained, isn't it? But yeah, I prefer like not too many endings, maybe like two, three, the
Mm,
good, bad, and neutral ending. That's probably the best ways. And obviously, like the world state you leave it should affect it. But yeah, I agree with that. But yeah, that's good. We got a good stew going here, man. Like can see like what sort of style do you prefer? Like do you prefer like the stylized sort of JRPG approach, a la like I don't know, you don't play Persona, but I got Persona 5 here,
yeah.
and that's very stylized. It's an Atlas game, and or do you prefer the sort of more muted sort of Western sort of approach? Which ones do you prefer? Like the sexy sort of anime, sort of stylish Japanese sort of way, or the sort of more grounded, sort of not say boring, but more like sort of
I think it depends on the game, really. And I think,
like for your game. Well, this is your game we're making.
uh,
Like, what do you
okay,
prefer? This is the for
uh,
your game. Remember,
I think I like a mixture of both because I like, and I know that's a very like,
you want things to be a bit more sexier then.
no, I don't, no, that wasn't the question. The question was stylized. So, like,
It
I
could be
think there
sexy
are,
as well.
I'm not really bothered about things looking sexy. I mean, I actually find a lot of the Western RPGs characters to be quite unattractive. And it wasn't until they started making them look more like, Fenris has a very JRPG look to him, I think. And I find him quite attractive, if I was into elves. But
Mm.
like I think I like to have characters. The problem with some Western RPGs, and I'm talking about Creed 4. Bless it, it's an independent developer, but all the characters, and I'm talking about your party members, kind of look exactly the same. There's no there's no personality in any of those character designs. And then you have
So
kind of
I'm sorry, like to cut, like keep cutting you off. I just want to like interject. So do you think the JRPGs like the character designs are better? Because I personally think they're better. I do.
I would um let me think about that because I think there are some character designs, like I love all of Mass Effect's character designs, honestly. And I like some I like Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which is an RPG. I like all their character designs really up quite a fair bit. But in general, I would say I don't like the over stylized Japanese like characters like Final Fantasy 15 offers. But I do appreciate like Final Fantasy 6, which you could argue is a more Western looking game or a more Western character design looking game. But I really love
Yeah. Well, I mean,
those character
I mean,
designs more
I mean,
than
they were
like
they were they were influenced by Dungeons and Dragons, so it kind of makes
yeah.
sense.
but I find like if you look at Fantasy, like for example, Final Fantasy 7 or 8, the character designs aren't that interesting. So I would say that I probably do like stylized, but not to the fact that they don't have like I want to see characters.
So yeah,
Um,
so you want to so this is becoming a bit like of a compromise. So you want a mixture of both. So
yeah,
you want style, but you don't want it over elaborate. So you like the sort of more sort of grounded proportions and looks, but you want a bit of style, bit of like something that makes it stand out a bit. Okay,
stand
yeah.
out
So we
exactly.
yeah, okay. We'll put that into the mix. And another thing is because I know you're pressed for time.
Oh,
What
it's
about
fine. It's not coming back
yeah,
from the
yeah,
house.
yeah. We don't, no one needs to know why you're pressed for time. Like what about party? Like talking about like party members. Like what's your idea of a good balance of a party? Like so let's look at your preferred John your preferred base was a fantasy medieval, right? So
Yeah,
swords and shields. So if you could choose like I won't give you too many party members. If you could choose like six, and each one, what would they all bring? Like, would it be a mixture of men? It would be a men and women,
yeah. It
or
was
like, or elves, or like not human ones, but like, what would you like to have in your party? And we'll get on to the love interests after
mm.
this. But what would you have? Like, you would like a
In
guy
terms of
who's a joker, a serious one, like those sort of
you need banter.
templates. Mm.
You need kind of comedic relief. So like I would say in terms of like fighter styles, I want a tank, I want a rogue, I want long distance, I want short distance, I want
Mhm.
all of it. I want a mage. I normally play mage when I play RPGs because I find them the most fun. But in terms of like character, like personalities, I would say you need a funny person, and you need a good balance of men and female. I know Final Fantasy, I think it was 15, that all had like an
You're all
all male
guys,
cast.
all
I was just like,
guys. Yeah.
that doesn't appeal to me whatsoever. It doesn't matter how pretty they are. I just don't want to play a game with all men. Um, and like I want difference of background. So I want I don't want just humans, I want aliens. But
No,
we're
you
talking
can't
about
you can't have aliens in your one. Or maybe you
yeah, no,
could, but you can't in your. This is your pot. Like we're trying to be a bit more focused on your pot.
okay, so I want, I
Elves,
want elves, I want
dwarfs,
ghosts, I want wolves, I want everything. I don't want
dwarfs. I said.
dwarfs.
You said.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, dwarfs. Because I don't know what kind of creatures would be in this medieval fantasy, but let's just go with like the typical one. So I want
typical ones.
yeah, dwarf, elf, any different kind of classes. Yeah,
So
I
do
like
you,
diversity,
c-
diversity.
like yeah, like you're like there's always got to be the serious one, the jokey one, the mysterious one, and the one who might betray you. Like, because
So
in yeah, like there was that in especially in Origins, the mysterious one was Morrigan,
mm,
and the one who might betray you was Zafrin, the assassin.
yeah,
So, because like I could go into final to Mass Effect, but this is your what we're focusing on your pot that you're stirring and
Baron, yeah,
making the juices. So like so you would have like characters of six and you would have those archetypes. You know, you got the dwarf, you got the elf, and maybe like another race that we don't know of. But then you'll have like their personalities will be like you got the serious one, you got the stoic one, the serious and stoic are the same thing. You got the mysterious one, you got
yeah,
the one who might betray you, you got the
yeah.
funny one, you got your best friend. Yeah, so like that's a yeah.
I want a grandmother. I want to win, from Dragon Age Origins, or an older man,
Uh,
like your grandmother or grandfather telling you off all the time. I kind of, um,
yeah.
I want.
So
I would want
basically, you want Dragon
mentor.
Age Origins, but
I,
a
it sounds
stylized version. Let's remake it then.
let's remake Dragon Age Origins. Yeah, I think
Uh,
but also I'll tell you something I don't particularly want
mm,
is I don't want people that worship my character. Do you know? Because Dragon Age and Mass Effect to a certain extent, but less of medieval fantasy. I don't want to be like worshipped. You know, like you get that in Origins and Inquisition as well. It's like, oh, you're so
yeah,
amazing. I don't want to
you get
be.
you get that in Skyrim because you're the Dragonborn, and
Yeah,
everyone's like, "Oh wow, you're Dragonborn," and everyone's like,
yeah.
"Wow, you're great," even though your character doesn't talk or really do
Mm.
much and doesn't have much personality. And then there's another thing. This is a side little thing. Do you prefer first person perspective or third person, or would you like to have an option of both or switching between?
Third person. I don't care for first
Yeah,
person.
I,
Because I don't know where I'm looking half the time. I
yeah.
need balance. Yeah.
And what's the point of
Basically,
like customizing your character if you can't fucking see
you'll
the
see them.
character half
Yeah.
the time? So
Yeah.
it's
That's
like
like
give me.
Skyrim.
Yeah, I mean Skyrim you can choose between both. You can
Yeah.
flick like between third and third. In Cyberpunk, it's all first person, and you get to see your character in cutscenes, but very rarely.
Mm.
And I always preferred over the shoulder third person
Yeah, me
perspective.
too.
So we'll chuck that in, sprinkle some paprika in there. It's going to taste nice. It's going to come out. But let's talk about like let's stay on that subject of like companions. Like, do you prefer a fixed love interest? Do you prefer a love interest? Do you prefer one in to be in the game or not? Like, let's just yes or no.
Yes.
Yeah, that's in there, right? Do you prefer like some games where you have multiple, you have the option of multiple, or do you prefer a like I was saying, so you prefer a love interest, do you
Yeah.
prefer having the option of multiple choose from, or would you prefer a fixed love interest? Like the story has to have that love interest. Like there's no going around it. That's kind of like part of the story where it's in there.
Uh, uh,
Um, no,
personally,
okay, just a sec.
personally, I would say I don't want a fixed love interest, and I don't want it to be a necessity for the plot. Um, so I'd like to choice because sometimes the actual fixed love interest um, is not great. It's not somebody I want to romance or
Mm,
particularly maybe interact with to an extent. So I like the option of having multiple, and I would like the option of not having to romance them as well. So I don't want them fixed into the storyline. Um,
mm.
yeah, so that would be my
Do,
ideal.
say like okay, there's you have that option. Um, would you prefer like quests that involve your love interest? Would you like more interaction with them? Not obviously it's not necessarily part of the story, but if you are in a romance, like because with Persona 5, if you can romance multiple, but you can sort of choose to focus on one, and there's actual scenes and not missions, but events with your love interest, like you go on
Yeah,
dates with them and you interact with them, which I quite like. But some of it could be like stories could be a bit infuriating when you have a love interest, but the whole interaction probably will accumulate to like 40 minutes of game of time in a say a 40-hour game. And kind of like I'm like if we're gonna have it, can we have like a bit of scenes or some missions together? So I know in The Witcher that does that in Witcher 3 it does it because you have options of uh Triss
trip.
or
Yennefer.
what's the Yennefer.
Yennefer. Yeah,
Yeah, so you have those interactions and those things like, especially if you're in a romance with one of them. I
yeah,
think in Witcher 3, they push in more Yennefer, but there's more scenes with her because she's part of the story. But yeah, like if you were to put that in there, would you like more sort of scenes and like specific like quests that's involving your potential love interest or your love interest.
I would like actual missions together, or missions to do with the love interest, that it has something to do with them being your love interest, if that makes sense. So like and I also like the option of not maybe flirting with multiple people and not actually knowing who your love interest is. It's like in Final Fantasy VII, where you can flirt with Tifa or Aerith and you don't know which one's going to knock on your door. So I kind of I like the idea of having missions together that revolve around the whole point that they're your love interest. They don't do that in Dragon Age that much, or or Bioware don't have like, they have missions you'll go like for that character, but it's not necessarily mean they're your love interest. It can be just like something involved in their backstory. So yeah, I haven't played Persona, but it does sound like a game I'd be interested in that.
Yeah, I mean, like it's good that it has like in the Persona series, there is like always once you sort of pursue a love interest and you become an item, there are stuff you can do with them that relates to you two being together. So that's cool. I like that. But yeah, I'm always sort of like taken out of a game when there's no love interest. I'm like, oh, there's not one. Come on, man, this is an RPG. Let's romance something. Like, come on.
Yeah.
I know Obsidian's game, The Outer Worlds, they didn't have any love interest in there. Even Knights of the Republic 2 is very vague. Who there was like no in Knights of the Republic 1, it was either Calf or Bastila, and they were very clear about that. In Knights of the Republic 2, it's very. I don't even think there is like a moments. There's tension between certain characters, but there's not actually any of that. So that was kind of when that happens, I'm like, yeah,
I know.
that's why I was really into that's why I was like, oh, Creed 4, man, that sounds like something right up my street with love interest, party members, but I think that's that Creed 4,
romance pretty poor. It's
yeah,
pretty poor.
I realized, but yeah, like
I
yeah,
just to talk about Creed, like just like to go on that the love interest aspect, and I think it needs to be very clear that you're romancing that person as well, because the issue with Creed 4 is that it doesn't have any, the lines don't make it, don't doesn't necessarily mean that you're romancing them, but if you don't say the right line, even if, and it has nothing to do with flirtation, it's like you need to, so they agree with you, it will stop the romance. So, like in Bioware, you could say to like, I mean, Alistair's very easy, or Morrigan, but you just basically go, oh, you're a handsome, or you're so beautiful. And that kind of like triggers the romance. And I think it needs to be very clear, because I completed Creed 4 and I didn't romance anybody because I didn't trigger the right line. And there's only like one way there's only a specific line that will trigger them to be your romance. And it just was like a bit disappointing that I was like, when is the romance going to happen? It just never did, because it didn't trigger that line.
Oh, that must have been pretty disappointing, man. Okay, cool. So we got that in there. You like a multiple choice romance, but you like some story specific missions involving your romantic partner. I mean, like one thing before we move on, in Dragon Age 2, if you romance the character, you can ask them to come live with you in your mansion. So that was pretty cool. There was moments like that, and the character, because I am romance Meryl, and she would actually call you in Elvish your love and stuff like that when, like in off dialogue and stuff in cutscenes and shit. I remember when like your mum got killed, and then she would come towards you in your bedroom and like you as your love interest and starts and comfort you. So I thought that was pretty cool. I was like, yeah, this is great. Yeah. That's why I quite like it over Inquisition, because obviously Inquisition, to get romance your love interest, it just takes so. I'm like 40 hours in, I'm still nowhere near like romancing any. Well, I flirted, but it's still like a long way off. But yeah, I like that, man. I like them to acknowledge you in dialogue that you're together. And it kind of
Yeah.
makes you feel like, oh, that's nice. I'm wanted. And I know they do that in The Witcher 3, so that's great. Even though like Geralt's a very randy person. So
Yeah,
anyway,
he's a
okay, we've established all this, we've put this in your pot, but what every RPG needs is a good antagonist to your protagonist, a good
yeah,
like Joker to your Batman. Do you know,
yeah.
like Lex, what's his surname to the Superman? Lex, it's not Lex
Lex
Luger,
Luthor.
Lex
Lex
Luthor.
Luthor.
Yeah, to your Superman. You want the yin to your yang. You want
Yeah,
someone to oppose you. Do you think that you want a one sort of fixed antagonist, or do you like an omnipresent sort of antagonist? Like, you do you want to face to that sort of to the
yeah,
villainy, or would you like it to be like not so? There's not like a particular villain, but there's an overarching sort of antagonist. A la, like in Fable 3, there's not actually, well, your brother is, but there's an overarching, the darkness is called. And it's sort of
yeah,
like an entity. Would you prefer like the fixed sort of like antagonist, like your Sephiroth, your sort of your
yeah,
Saren? Because
yeah. I think, yeah, sorry.
even in, so like in Dragon Age Origins, the primary antagonist was Logain, but he didn't turn out to be. It was the Archdemon, but the Archdemon's a bit shit because it's just
Yeah,
a high, it's just like old god dragon. So
mm,
yeah, I've always preferred like a focused sort of, and the antithesis to your character, something to
yeah.
drive toward.
Yeah, I think unfortunately with all the Dragon Age games, the thing that's let them down has been the villain in every single game. Like I didn't like Meredith that much because she wasn't really a threat throughout the game. Like I like that kind of ongoing threat from that person. Corinthius was a non-character. Like I don't really care much for him. I didn't feel he was hardly in the game. So like, do you know what I mean? The best villain for me is that kind of Sephiroth, and to a certain extent, Mass Effect One, they did the villain really well. Who was it? It was the
Darren, Darren,
Baron. Yeah,
Darren.
yeah, he was excellent. And just having that face and having somebody who's kind of, I don't want like this, oh, like this amazing, like
Like the Reapers. Did you not like the Reapers?
I like the Reapers because the Reapers
That's an
were
overarching, yeah, but that's like an
yeah,
overarching sort of villain.
yeah, I like the Reapers to an extent, but the thing is they were like an overarching villain, but each game had their own villain, even if it was like the
No, no, they didn't. Number two didn't. The collectors aren't. They're a collective. They're not like a focused.
you had what was it? The
Harbinger wasn't
no,
barely.
no, I'm not talking about the Harbinger. I'm talking about not Charlie Sheen, Michael
No, no. The elusive man was your ally in two.
number two, but he was
Yeah.
also he was also he was a bad person, you know.
Well,
He
he
was some
helped you. He wasn't your, he was your ally until the end. But even then, we could still be friends with him at the end. So he's not really. It's the collectors, and the collectors are like an omnipresent threat
I mean,
who worked with the Reapers.
I like the Reapers, but I wouldn't say like they're kind of scary. They were quite scary, but they were present. Do you know what I mean? Whereas somebody like, I don't know, the Archdemon wasn't present. You didn't feel the threat of the Archdemon until the very end. Like it wasn't until the very end of Dragon Age Origins where you actually felt like
And plus, he controlled the Darkspawn, which are like a no overarching, omnipresent sort of threat. With there was just multiple of them. So, but yeah, I agree. I prefer like a Sephiroth sort of focus sort of villain
mm,
that your character sort of can engage. Yeah,
yeah,
even in like Final Fantasy X, there was Sin, and that was shit.
mm,
But your main villain was Seymour,
yeah,
that the high priest, and I thought he was a bit crap as well.
yeah,
But yeah, I prefer I don't they don't have to be necessarily evil. There's got to be a sort of like a bit of they've got to be a bit layered
Yeah,
because you just
that's
don't
why I
want a
like
bad guy
him.
for sake of being having a
Think of
bad
it
guy.
like
Uh,
envious.
yeah,
He was just like,
uh,
I'm just
yeah,
evil.
yeah. He's just yeah. Oh, I'm a Tevinter mage. I'm
That,
now really evil. I'm gonna
that's
just
why
like
that's why I'm kind of interested in Solus being
yeah, that'd be
the
good. I'm really
I'd
because
be
he
interested
was
in
your party
him.
member, yeah, and now
And
he's
actually his goals of bringing like the old elves and that old, way of life back is actually something that's quite empathetic.
mm,
That actually you can see it's like kind of like to a lesser extent, like the Avengers where you had uh
Thanos.
Thanos
Thanos.
and yeah, like he, arguably he is like, even though the way he went about it, but his intentions were good. So I kind of like that layered enemy. Sephiroth is very layered as well, being kind of a product of, you know, his own creation. It's a great,
He was created though, wasn't he? He was created in
yeah, exactly.
by
He's a
Hydra.
product of his own being, he turned evil because he found out the truth.
Mm.
And that was like one of my the best scenes in Final Fantasy VII was when you're in Nibelheim and Sephiroth goes crazy and starts killing everybody was really good.
Mm.
So
Yeah, I mean, like in Persona, there's not like a Pacific one villain. There's multiple villains, but there's an overarching sort of enemy, but you don't really see it until the end. There's always a big reveal of who's the bad guy is, and I'm just like, oh, I've got to play. I've played like 70 hours, and then I just discovered it's this dude that he's always like the nice guy. He turns out to be the
yeah,
villain, and yeah, this is how it is in Persona. There's never like a set villain that there's like places they are villains, but you defeat them and you move on to the next one,
yeah,
and then it turns out like there's one person who's the mastermind behind everything. But yeah, I think a game and everything you need a good villain to go up against. That's what
yeah,
makes like certain movies, stories more compelling. I mean, like if you like Lord of the Rings, you had Sauron. He was like the overarching villain. He was just a big eye, though, wasn't he? To be honest with you, but he was a
but
threat. But he wasn't really like a character, though, was he? Really, he
do you
wasn't
remember
really.
do you remember when you played Jade Empire for the first time and the
Mm,
villain turned out to be your mentor? And I know that's
mm,
like kind of cliche, but when we first played that, I remember you going like
mm,
he was like because I you played it first and you went to me, oh, I'm not going to tell you what happens. You're going to be so surprised. And it seems
mm.
when you replay, you're like, this is so obvious. But
Yeah.
then you play it and you're like, oh my God, like,
Do
um,
you? Yeah,
that
like
is amazing. And then when
yeah.
you're
Well, would you? Because we can wax lyrical about Bioware, but let's try and say talk about the game what you're trying to make. How would you like your villain to be? Would you like him or her or it to be like now we focused that you want like a focused villain. Do you want it to be like a mentor? Do you want it to be a friend who turns into your enemy? Or would you like it just to be someone who just comes out of nowhere and you have to defeat it? Like what kind of villain would you like to shape? Or would you like to have like say like you could have the cliches like, oh, it killed my family and I want revenge, that kind of classic one. Or would you like it to be a bit more deeper than that? Like he was a tutor, he was a friend, who sort of got led astray, and then now you have to
yeah,
take him down, or was there a friend that you now have to take? Like, how would you like your villain to?
I don't like the idea that it has to be connected to the main protagonist, like a personal backstory between the main protagonist
Mm,
and the villain. I do want the villain to have some sort of goal that doesn't revolve around I'm just evil and I want to destroy the world. Like I want a goal that I can sort of go, oh, maybe he's got a point, or he's been or she has been is a product of what's happened to them in the past, and they're not necessarily like black and white, because arguably you could say the villain of Dragon Age 2 was Anders in a way, and you can there's that argument, and I kind of, does it need to be part of my party? That's never happened before in any game I've played where the villain is like a member of your party, not that I can think of. But
Not that I can think of. Yeah.
yeah, and I think that would be an interesting kind of turn to, something that's, I like the unexpected, and I like that, oh, there's a not a big reveal, but like I didn't know that was going to happen. I like a twist in the story. So
Mm.
not to, Sephiroth, we all kind of, when we find out that his, actually the main villain of Final Fantasy VII is Genova, like, so that was a big twist. Or, Knights of a Republic, when you're actually the villain, you'll say you're the villain,
That
you're the
was a
big
bit.
yourself,
That
you
was
know.
great. Yeah.
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 I like just playing the game, just going, oh my God. Like I always thought with Inquisition to a certain extent that there was going to be this big reveal, like there was going to be this, like Corinthians was going to be someone like meaningful, but it was just an evil guy. And then you had Solus, and then you have that bit in the DLC where that felt like it should have been the end of the game.
I kind of
You
feel
know,
like that was meant to be like
to be,
Trespasser.
yeah,
Yeah, that
trespassing.
yeah, I kind of feel like they cut that out, and or do you know what I mean? Like I was like, when I first played the Inquisition, I was like, oh, it's over. That was kind of anticlimactic.
Gnostic, yeah, yeah.
And then it turns out like you play Trespasser, and that's the epilogue. I was like, why did they cut this out? I don't know. I think you have to pay for it as well. I was like, if I
Yeah.
can understand if they can give it free DLC because that completes the story. But yeah, that's set up to be good, man. Like, I'm looking forward to that. But like with your game, would it be like so your villain will be someone, because I'm not too sure if you defined your villain. You don't want it to be necessarily related to you. You want it to have like a complex sort of motivations. Like it
Yeah.
has to have a reason. You just don't want it to be evil for the sake of being a villain.
Yeah, there can be an omnipresence as well, but that's not the main villain. Do you know what I mean? Like in Buffy with the first, I thought that was a crap villain, to be honest with you. But like I want there to be a person who is the villain and who's kind of the yin to your yang, as you were saying, and who there's a twist. I want there to be a twist. I just
Huh.
want like something.
Twists.
Yeah. How
Okay.
about you? Like, you haven't mentioned who your ideal, I mean,
Well,
apart from
no, because
person.
this is more for your pot.
Mm,
So yeah, I've always preferred a charismatic villain,
mm,
character with motivation. I just don't want it to be evil for the sake of being, because that's kind of boring. It's like, oh,
mm,
I'm killing everyone. I'm doing it. It's got to be some sort of meaning towards something like you
mm.
can slightly empathize with. Are you like scratching
So
your
I've got
chin
it.
there?
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, I
Oh.
remember you on camera, man. Like so, yeah, like yeah, I need the character to have some sort of layers. I would like to be kind of like not related to me, but like a reflection of my inverse. But like I say, like one more thing before we wrap this up. Um, would you like your character? Would you like the story to have? I know we said multiple endings, but would you like your character to have like a morality system? So do bad things, you get negative points, and it affects the world. And if you do good things, it affects the world. Or you can be that sort of in the middle. Would you like that sort of system in place? Or
Um,
would you like just to get rid of it entirely?
no, I think what I would like is kind of a combination of like the clip, like an interactive story where at the end of each chapter they give you like, oh, your character's like friendly, your character, it builds up personality. So like your interactions you have build up like, oh, you're very empathetic. So you have like different scales rather than it just being bad and good. Like, oh, your character is decisive, your character is brave, and you have like different skills as opposed to being just one skill of like good and bad. Like, because I think characters are complex and they're not just bad and good. So you can have like elements of your character being good at this, good at that, bad at that. So to answer your question, I would like that in a more complex way,
Mm.
and
All
not
right.
just like
Okay, so like your pot is boiling away, it's nearly done. You just need a sprinkling of like a bit of bit of extra toppings. Okay, so this is a bit like basic question, but would you prefer um like oh what was I gonna say? I had it in my head just a minute ago. I had it in my head. What was it? What was I gonna say? I've completely forgotten what I was gonna say now. It was more of a cosmetic thing. It wasn't really like a deep question. Obviously like customization. You get to choose. You get to uh, like. Would you? Yeah, this is what I was gonna say. Would you like a like sort of like a job system in no the leveling up system? That's what I was gonna say. How would you like it to level up? Would you like it auto leveling where you don't have any say? Would you like it more like a deep sort of like sort of RPG sort of system where you sort of like have like subsections, charisma, intimidate, and then you have your other section of like you choose your like say like you're a sword wielder, so you get to choose like parts
yeah.
of like that, or if you're like you're a mage, would you like you can choose parts of like would you like it to be like sort of like more sort of broke down RPG, or would you like it to be more like a streamlined sort of service like doing like that more RPGs are now, they're more streamlined, do you know what
No,
I
I don't
mean,
like
they're
streamlined.
lesser.
I
Mm.
don't. I like being able to level up what I want to level up and what kind of things I
more
think the character.
more yeah.
Yeah, like more
Mm.
nuanced than just like automatic auto level up. I like to be like because there's some things like you're playing a game and let's say you've played it once before
Mm.
and you realize actually I need somebody who's a really good lockpick and I need to level up pretty early because there's an area full of like locked doors or locked
Mm.
things, or, as opposed to just like auto level up. Or I need a lot of charisma because or intimidation because I know there's this interaction coming up. Like I always prioritize those little things like lock picking and charisma over like just brute strength or
Yeah,
like or
yeah,
stamina, something like that.
yeah. I always like put plenty of points in charm, charisma, not cohesion. When you're trying to entice someone, what's that
Yeah,
word?
coercion.
Coercion. Yeah, that I always put points into that because I always find like actually when you get multiple dialogue options, when you have like higher charisma and all that, or intimidate, you get more options and your chances
Yeah.
of succeeding that like say like you can avoid a fight or you're trying to like charm someone, the chances are higher if you put more points into that. So I've always liked that. I don't like games where they just auto level up
Yeah, I
and
don't
it's
like
just
that.
like, oh wow, well, what's happened here? Don't I get to like put my points in there or anything like
Mm.
that? Which I think like games are doing more and more because they're trying to be more streamlined for the because not now like we're older gamers, but younger gamers probably don't like to fiddle around with all that stuff in the background. Sort of just like it to be done for them.
Yeah, I think I, I think there needs to be a reward and penalty for how you craft your character. So if your character is very good at like intimidation or charisma, but you haven't been living up their like um I don't know lot picking skills, then you sacrifice not getting into that jail cell because you haven't leveled that up. So you have to replay it or you have to go back. I do like that because then you're not like invincible, that you have to kind of build your character up. But
Yeah.
saying that, I have a question for you in terms of because we've spoken a lot about like the story and narrative and characters and aesthetics, but in terms of gameplay, in terms of like fighting, I have to say I do miss like turn-based fighting system.
So you,
Um,
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah,
uh,
I'll let you answer your own question. So you prefer
okay.
what would you prefer?
Like I don't like button smashing. And I don't like. I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't really. I know lots of people did like it, but Dragon Age 2, where your character, you just press A and your character's doing like all the automatic movements. I'm not a big fan of that. I kind of like having a somewhat not so much old like Final Fantasy 7 where you're like the enemy's there and then you hit them and you go back and then you you know,
Turn
but like
based.
yeah, but like somewhat of a turn, like a not a mixture. It's still turn based, but it's a little bit more cohesive and it's a little bit more like natural than opposed to the old bit where you hit, go back, smack, go back.
Yeah.
You know.
Um. No, I prefer the sort of, I prefer the Witcher 3 sort of combat where you have complete control over Garrett and you're moving around. You have a dodge, everything. I prefer that a lot more. It's just a more. Obviously, you have to level him up correctly, and your fighting stances are dependent on how well you leveled him. But I do prefer that over turn-based combat. It's just I'm not a big fan of. I mean, I liked it at the time for those games, but now I prefer complete control over my character, stuff like that. I mean, like with Persona, that's very old school. It's turn-based combat on that, so you're just a fixed position, and you just sort of take your turn, or you miss a turn, depending on if you get hit with certain spells or something like that, or effects. But yeah, I mean, it's good, but if I prefer like the more combat-y role of the of it. I like even Inquisition. I think is pretty good, like mixture between. No, it's not really turn-based, but it's like a mixture between like that sort of like old school and new. Like you can be more sort of tactical with it as well now because you've got the overhead camera and you can do it that way. But yeah, I think we've left your stew boiling away. It smells great. Hopefully, it will taste great. We're gonna serve it to each other, and we're gonna have a taste, and we're
This
gonna
metaphor is getting
yeah.
a bit weird.
Yeah, and we're gonna go. Is this gonna warrant another taste? Will we play? Will we taste it again, or would we like some? Would it like a sequel? Would you just have it stand alone, or would you like have a sequel? Would you like it a franchise?
Um, I'd like a franchise. I'm going to be honest with you. But and I don't. It's hard to say, but I really, really enjoyed the adventures where my character was continuing. Them like they were. It wasn't just ended. Like I knew there was going to be another adventure
Yeah,
um lined
yeah.
up for me.
I get attached to characters, and I go,
Yeah,
wow,
me too.
I kind of wish they like bring these guys back or stuff, which Dragon Age don't really do. They sort of
Well, they
change it up a
can't
lot.
because they shot
They,
themselves in the foot, didn't
they
they?
change it up. They change it up a lot, but Mass Effect they do, so it's good. Yeah, but I think that's going to about to do it. Anything else you would like to say? Would you like to shout out anything? Would you
I
like
think
to
I just created Dragon Age, but with
stylized? Yeah,
highlight Final Fantasy, really.
yeah, stylized fantasy game. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
kind of is with a focused antagonist, a little mixture of uh, other games here and there. So and turn based as well. So it's like that's like how
Yeah.
you portray it. Yeah. So yeah,
I
you
grown
know,
up.
I think that's good. Like we all got our own tastes, but yeah, um, yeah. Thanks for joining me again, and thanks for you guys for watching or listening or um, yeah, like this podcast is available on most podcast platforms, Spotify, Amazon, and yeah, and YouTube, so everyone can see what Laura is, Frankie is doing on camera. So yeah, thanks for watching. See you around. Bye.
Bye.